Stunned by the sudden war, MacArthur takes no action. At lunchtime that day, waves of Zeros and Mitsubishis strike his two main airfields. He loses most of his air force on the ground. The next day, he's at his desk, as confident and arrogant as ever. MacArthur has 30,000 American and Filipino regulars, plus 100,000 raw recruits. Like his distant cousin Churchill, MacArthur vows to fight on the beaches. His refusal to retreat is partly vanity. It's the orders you disobey, he says, that make you famous.
Well, I wouldn't say that MacArthur thought he was divine, but it was very close to it. And he was a man who never admitted a mistake.
I believe there, say, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, he'll be go down in history as one of the greatest generals the United States has ever produced, and perhaps in the world.
The Japanese invade the Philippines 72 hours after Pearl Harbor. The first small probes are far from Manila. MacArthur ignores these probes, awaiting the main assault. MacArthur's character influences his entire wartime strategy. These are his islands. His father had held them, so must he. Although America is at war in Asia, the greater peril is in Europe. Hitler's forces stretch from the gates of Moscow to the skies of London. When Hitler recklessly declares war on America, U.S. policy is resolved. Europe becomes the main priority. The Japanese sweep across Asia unchecked, and MacArthur feels abandoned. He's at times self-serving, at times perceptive in his later reminiscences.
A serious naval effort might well have saved the Philippines and stopped the Japanese drive for the south and east. A top-level decision had long ago been reached that the Atlantic War came first. President Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill reaffirmed a policy to concentrate first on the defeat of Germany. Unhappily, I was not informed of any of these vital conferences and believed that a brave effort at relief was in the making. I have always felt that my real enemy was behind me in Washington.
War correspondent Robert Sherrod remembers MacArthur's outrageous ego.
He didn't like Washington to tell him what to do. And he really would get into a stew over orders he received from his superiors in Washington.
Reporter William Dunn recalls MacArthur's arrogance favorably.
He had supreme confidence in himself, but I never had the feeling he was egotistical. But I've heard people say the trouble with him is he's just an egotistical stuffed shirt. Well, I said, maybe he is egotistical. That's a matter of opinion, a definition. What is egotism? But how would you like to go into battle behind a general with an inferiority complex?
Late December 1941, 40,000 Japanese invade at Lingayen, north of Manila. MacArthur, having predicted the landing site, quickly counterattacks. MacArthur's troops are successful. They outnumber the Japanese 2 to 1. But they're poorly equipped for jungle war. A survivor, Colonel Achille Tisdale.
It was hot and humid. And so far as the fighting was concerned, we were highly successful. We licked the hell out of the Japs. Then we ran out of food and quinine in a area of the world that's renowned for malaria. and we had quite a sick list.
MacArthur concedes to Washington's directive. He orders a retreat. Because retreat is new to MacArthur, he has neglected his fallback position, the tab. Corporal Arthur Bresci.
When he went north to try to stop the Japanese at the beaches, had we used that time to fortify Bataan, our defeat would not have been as ignominious. The medical supplies which were so mandatory to live in a tropical climate, we didn't have. We left them in Manila. We left thousands of tons of rice up in a place called Cabanatuan.
Christmas Eve. MacArthur's troops have now retreated to the Bataan Peninsula. The Japanese have them bottled on land and cut off at sea. MacArthur has only a token naval force, a few PT boats. Admiral John Buckley, then a lieutenant.
We could not fight a naval sea battle at that time and win. Therefore, I knew we were isolated, and the thing was hopeless as far as I was concerned here that we'd ever be able to be evacuated or with help would come to be able to defeat the Japanese land forces. And I'll never forget that Christmas Eve. We had to literally live off the country. And in that connection there, one of our officers managed to capture a live wild pig. We roasted this pig, and this was for 111 men. And the men were almost frantic, and I'll never forget that, in grabbing hunks of meat from that animal for their Christmas dinner, and there's very little else.
At night, with Manila endangered, MacArthur himself retreats to the island of Corregidor.
On Christmas Eve, I evacuated Manila, declaring it an open city. It no longer had any practical military value. The entrance to Manila Bay was completely covered by Corregidor and Bataan, and its use would be denied to the enemy. He had the bottle, but I had the cork.
The cork is the rock island of Corregidor, the Gibraltar of the Pacific, commanding the entrance to Manila Bay. MacArthur has kept with him his wife, Jean, and 3-year-old son, Arthur. His family takes shelter in the Malinta Tunnel, a 1,400-foot-long bomb-proof bunker. Also there is MacArthur's public relations officer, a colonel, Legrand Diller.
Mr. MacArthur and Arthur began sleeping in the tunnel at night, as the rest of us did, but the general never did. He stayed in the officers' quarters and spent the nights there, but then we had our office in the tunnel. And as far as what it was like, well, it was like working and sleeping in the Holland Tunnel. It was just about the same size and about the same atmosphere. We ate outside. We had a little tent outside and ate in that. And here was the Japanese army moving down the Bataan Peninsula, coming and coming and coming.
MacArthur's position is hopeless. Japanese artillery rings Manila Bay. The big guns of Corregidor, designed for naval war, roar back, but with little effect. MacArthur refuses to take cover. He parades his bravery. He wants, like Caesar, to inspire, to stand apart and above.
When I was in the Pacific, I was in the Marine Corps, and all of us in the Marine Corps and in the Navy had a very negative feeling toward MacArthur. We thought he was a show-off, and we didn't think he was particularly brave. In fact, he was called Dugout Doug.
Actually, he was called Dugout Doug, I believe, because the soldiers on Bataan started calling him that because he never came to Bataan. They said he's in a dugout back in Corregidor on the rock. Of course, he wasn't, but that's what they thought anyway.
Dugout Doug MacArthur lies a-shaking on the rock, safe from all the bombs and from any shock. Dugout Doug is eating of the best food on Bataan, and his troops go stop.
of the day dictated that you walk up to someone and say, "Do you know Dugout Doug?" And the answer invariably was, "Yes, I'm one of the diggers who dug a dugout for Dugout Doug."
Well, we used to have a saying during the war, if you want to be safe, stay close to a general. If you want to fly safely, get in the general's plane. But you couldn't say that with MacArthur because he looked for it. I've been with him a number of times when they would tell him, "Be careful over there," and there he'd go.
He was brave to the extent of being foolhardy. Because, well, on Corregidor, he would go out and when the bombers started dropping bombs, he would go stand outside rather than taking cover.
MacArthur believes a commander must be seen to be fearless. The general is casual, his reaction almost lyrical as he faces approaching bombers.
They came in perfect formation, glittering in the bright blue sky. Far off, they looked like silver pieces thrown against the sun. But their currency was death, and their appearance a deceit. At the sound of an air alarm, an aide and I would make our way onto the highway to watch the weaving pattern of the enemy's formations. There was nothing of bravado in this. It was simply my duty. The subtle corrosion of panic or fatigue, or the feeling of just being fed up, can only be arrested by the intervention of the leader.